has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl.
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years. Just listen to what she says. And guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
Bob Iger thought he was greenlighting a surefire crowd pleaser, a live-action upgrade of the very film that built the Disney empire. Instead, he triggered a chain reaction so volatile that studio insiders now joke about holding daily code apple crisis calls just to keep the project from collapsing in real time.
You had Rachel Zegler on the docket too. I think actresses should be quiet. I understand
She's
why.
such an...
By the end of this story, you'll understand why a movie once destined to print money is now forecast to bleed at least $115 million, and why its 23-year-old star, Rachel Zegler, suddenly finds herself branded the internet's new villain.
Said she hated Snow White, mocked the fact that there was a prince, and that she falls in love as opposed to leaning into her own power. We could go on.
But before we reach the financial crater, we need to rewind to the moment Disney dared to tamper with the most sacred jewel in its vault. Stick around, because every twist in this saga makes the previous headline look tame, and the final fallout could rewrite how Hollywood treats every remake to come. When Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937, it wasn't just a cartoon, it was a revelation. Audiences stepped out of Depression-era drabness and into a Technicolor dream where music swelled, animals talked, and a young girl's goodness literally conquered death. Critics hailed it as a moving piece of art. Box office totals shattered records, and Walt Disney's fledgling studio suddenly sat atop pop culture's throne. Over the next 8 decades, repeat theatrical re-releases, VHS launches, and Disney Plus streams kept the film's heartbeat alive. But nostalgia cuts 2 ways. To older fans, the 1937 classic is the cinematic equivalent of Grandma's wedding china. Look, don't touch. To younger viewers raised on Marvel quips and TikTok pacing, the same story can feel quaint, even dated. Disney's executives spotted an opening, modernize Snow White, rake in global billions, and prove, yet again, that no intellectual property is too old to mint anew. It sounded foolproof on paper. The plan: pair Spider-Man director Mark Webb with screenwriters Greta Gerwig and Aaron Cressida Wilson, toss in new songs by La La Land duo Pasek and Paul, and anchor the whole venture with a fresh-faced lead who could sing, charm, and headline social justice soundbites. Enter Rachel Zegler. The West Side Story breakout Spielberg himself had dubbed The Future, Disney's cost estimate, a mid-range $170 million production budget, plus the usual marketing blitz. Internal projections said the brand name alone would propel the movie to a cool $750 million global haul. But those glossy decks never accounted for what would happen after Zegler opened her mouth. And once she did, the studio's dream roadshow veered straight off the enchanted forest trail. During a 2023 red carpet interview, Zegler laughed that the original film was so dated and vowed her version of Snow White wouldn't be saved by a guy. She's not dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader her father taught her to be. Clips of that exchange spread like fire on X, formerly Twitter, triggering a backlash that dwarfed even the Seven themselves. Traditionalists blasted Disney for butchering a classic to tick modern boxes, while culture war pundits accused the actress of spitting on an American treasure. Zegler doubled down. In follow-up Q&As, she declared, "It's no longer 1937," and teased that the prince's part was basically non-existent. Fan ear morphed into boycott hashtags. No prince, no ticket, not my Snow White, and YouTube reaction channels pumped out daily go woke, go broke tirades that racked up millions of views. Disney's PR team attempted damage control, but every new attempt at clarification only sparked fresh threads dissecting Zegler's tone. Meanwhile, internal Slack logs, later leaked, showed marketers begging the star to dial back activism until after release. She didn't. Instead, she tweeted solidarity messages about unrelated global conflicts, and right-wing commentators gleefully connected those statements to calls for an all-out box office strike. The dominoes were falling, but the biggest topple was yet to come, and it would cost real money, not just reputation. Original stills featured 7 practical actors in intricate dwarf prosthetics. Weeks later, a paparazzi snap revealed a mixed-gender, full-size entourage strolling beside Zegler. only one of whom had dwarfism. Disney insisted they were magical creatures and promised VFX enhancements. The internet rolled its eyes. Peter Dinklage, himself a dwarf actor, blasted the studio for half-baked optics. Furious calls flooded Disney's consumer relations line, demanding the dwarfs either stay true or stay gone. Suddenly, the production schedule lurched. Sets were dismantled. Additional interiors constructed on a London soundstage. Industry trackers like Variety slid fresh numbers across subscribers' inboxes. The budget had blown past $220 million, then $250 million, and ultimately landed near $270 million, even before marketing. Executives cited COVID gaps, SAG-AFTRA strike delays, and necessary creative refinements. Private memos, however, blamed ongoing reputational headwinds and talent-driven script pivots. Reshoots stretched through late 2024. Zegler, by now a lightning rod, allegedly demanded overtime pay for every extra minute in costume, a soundbite that tabloids weaponized into diva headlines. Crew members grumbled that the film was a sinking ship held together with VFX band-aids. And yet Disney still had one comfort. Release day sat a safe 9 months away, with plenty of time for buzz to thaw, unless, of course, the CEO's own kids stepped in. In November 2024, Maxwell Iger, Bob's college-age son, shared an Instagram story claiming Zegler had hijacked our beloved fairy tale to preach. Though the story vanished within hours, screenshots detonated across forums. For dissenters, the post felt like insider proof that Disney brass secretly regretted their casting choice. For loyalists, it revealed a rift that stabbed morale deeper than any external review. Bob Iger refused official comment, but bloggers noted that when he rattled off Disney's 2025 lineup on an earnings call, he omitted Snow White entirely. Investors listened. Disney's stock dipped 2% overnight. Analysts warned that even a modest underperformance could translate into an 8-digit write-down. Rival studios smirked, calling the episode the fairest disaster of them all. Still, a movie's fate isn't sealed until opening weekend. But the numbers that arrived would chill even the most optimistic Mouseketeer. Advanced tracking projected a $70 million domestic debut. Reality, $29.8 million. Critics hammered the film for diaper-smooth stakes and plastic-looking CGI dwarves. Rotten Tomatoes scored it at a dismal 24%, the lowest Disney remake rating to date. Word of mouth nosedived, and Weekend 2 revenues collapsed a brutal 68%. Mathematical models now peg total losses at $115 million after theatrical split and residuals. The merchandising fallout proved equally grim. Unsold Funko Pops of Zegler's likeness, cluttered clearance bins, and a once-planned Deluxe Park parade was quietly shelved. Worse, Disney's flagship Snow White's Enchanted Wish ride faced calls for closure to avoid confusion, an option insiders admit is under review. But numbers alone don't capture the cultural shockwave that followed, because what happened next made the controversy bigger than any single film. YouTube essayists branded Zegler the new Amber Heard, and day trading subreddits floated theories that Iger would resign over the fiasco. Hashtag campaigns. Fire Bob Iger, or Save the Dwarfs, trended for days, pulling mainstream news outlets into the fray. Cable pundits framed the flop as proof that Americans reject forced messaging, while progressive voices argued backlash proved entrenched misogyny. Brands took sides, some quietly. A major fast food sponsor canceled a cross-promotion deal. A popular cosmetics firm pulled its limited edition Apple Blossom palette after early sales tanked. Even Disneyland's 2025 ticket pre-sales showed an uncharacteristic dip, which survey analysts tied directly to frustration over corporate tone deafness. Inside Disney, tempers flared. Veteran animators questioned why the studio risked legacy titles instead of launching originals. Younger staffers countered that reinvention was essential for relevance. HR reportedly mediated multiple heated meetings between classicists and modernizers. But amid the noise, one question echoed loudest. Where does Disney, where does Hollywood go from here? Financial forecasts forced strategists to shelve 2 other nostalgia-based projects in early development. Rumors swirled that the Tron reboot and an Aristocats musical hybrid were quietly paused pending market appetite. Shareholders demanded a pivot toward lower-risk streaming series and mid-budget originals. For Zegler, the next steps look equally turbulent. Studio dealmakers whisper that no IP-heavy project will touch her until the smoke clears. One casting director put it bluntly, "You don't park a Ferrari next to a fresh crash scene." She still holds powerful allies, Steven Spielberg among them, but the reality of insurance premiums and fan sentiment looms large. As for Bob Iger, analysts note he faces a paradox. Champion inclusivity, yet safeguard century-old brands that owe their worth to generational nostalgia. If Snow White stays red on the balance sheet, he may trim the very modernizing impulses the remake tried to showcase. Some board members even floated separating Disney Animation's classics from live-action departments to insulate heritage from experimental tweaks. And hovering over every memo is that $270 million line on the ledger. A reminder that vision, without audience trust, can turn any prince into a frog, fast. Snow White 2025 was meant to crown a new era of empowered fairy tales. Instead, it ripped open a vault of buried tensions about gender roles, nostalgia, and corporate storytelling. The fallout teaches three brutal truths. Legacy is fragile, tamper without tact, and decades of goodwill can evaporate overnight. Audiences smell authenticity. When changes appear performative, they push back harder than any PR spin can contain. Budgets magnify mistakes. At $270 million, even a mild miscalculation becomes a public spectacle. Bob Iger now faces more than an underperforming film. He faces an existential referendum on Disney's identity. Rachel Zegler stands at a fork in her career. Either she turns this controversy into a redemption arc, or she becomes Hollywood's cautionary tale about talking too freely before the final cut. And viewers, they've discovered their voices can hit harder than any critic's pen, shaping a blockbuster's destiny one retweet at a time. So the next time a studio executive reaches for a beloved classic, they'll remember the broken glass. Coffin Disney left on the path, a crystal-clear warning that even the fairest stories can become the fiercest nightmares when revision collides with reverence. The Mirror's verdict is in, and it doesn't lie. Proceed carefully or risk shattering. Fairy tale magic beyond repair.